Today, we live in a very, very confused world. A very confused world. And if you look at the word confusion, it is exactly opposite of the word confusion. Chaos, confusion is absolutely opposite from communion. And that is the kind of world that we live in today. When you look at the newspapers, I just saw outside the Times of India lying over there. It took me a lot of effort not to pick up the newspaper because I live on newspapers. I need newspapers to galvanize my next column and the next. But I didn't read the newspapers because I realized that all it would add to is the confused state which the world is now. Why are we confused? We are confused because we don't know our response to the wars which are going on. We don't know our response to the hate that is happening in the world. Israel, Palestine. War going on. What are we told? We are told to go back to the Bible. We read that Israel was God's chosen people, which is all great. And then we look and see Palestinians being killed, children being killed. Do we feel confused? We wonder what's our response. Are we supposed to take Israel's side because it is mentioned? Or are we supposed to respond to those children and other people who are being killed ruthlessly? What is our response? And then you go a little further, you see the war between Russia and Ukraine. Again, confusion. We see India's stand, where India has taken the side of Russia. We realize that there's a bully power which is fighting a small country. Again, we are confused. And this confusion is reigning over the whole of our country. And closer home, there's even more confusion. And here the confusion is slightly different. We see a majority which is attacking another minority ruthlessly in the country, just for the sake of getting votes. And what do? We are told very often, take the side. Don't take the side of the Muslim. Again, we are confused. Because everything in us tells us, take the side of the underdog. So there's confusion. Shall we agree to the fact there's confusion not only in the world but around us or happening all over us? Which makes it all the more reason for us to find a response to this confusion. And that response can never be within us. It has to be like the song. Again, I'm going back to the song, witnessing. And witnessing is a form of taking what is inside us and expressing it outside, right? That's what witnessing is. I mean, you cannot witness in a little chamber, in a little small little cubicle and witness between you and God. You need to take it out. But what should our response be? And that's what I'm going to try and start this with. What should our response be to the confusion in the world? Think about it. I believe that our response should be asking ourselves a question: what would Jesus' response be? After all, it is not up to us to individually bring a response, but as followers of Jesus, to be able to bring a response which would be his response. Am I right on this, sisters? Can we look in terms of that? And how do we find out what Jesus' response would be? Would he say, yes, those Palestinian children, it's wrong, let's side with the Palestinians? No, Israel is right, let's side with Israel. What would his response be? And the best way to find out, I believe, Beatitudes. There he is, on top of a mountain, all the people around him. What have they come to listen to? They have most probably come to listen to Jesus because in all probability they feel that here's a man who's going to spark a rebellion which is going to make the Jews take over the state of Israel and get it back for them from the Romans. So they've all come to listen to him. And what does he do? He starts talking just the opposite of what the people expect. And one of the 7 Beatitudes is, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And sisters, aren't we all the children of God? You have left your homes, you have left your lives with your families and have joined together to serve God, to be called His children even more closely, right? So our response in this nation, in this world, I fully believe is to be peacemakers. And this is not just a response I found today to talk over here to you all. This is something that I believe in totally as Christians in this country where we're just 2%. What is our role over here? And I believe fully, firmly, that we have a wonderful role over here in this country. A wonderful role. This is not a time to get upset. This is not a time to get all scared about what is happening to the Christians around here because we hear of a church being burned or we hear of something else happening to a priest. Yes, it is happening. Here and there it is happening. But collectively, what is our duty here as the 2% people in this nation? Just a little, for the Malayalis over here, just a little salt, just a little flavor to be put into some of the best food, to bring in that little taste. We can make the best food on the earth, and if the salt is missing, Shakespeare brings it out so well in one of his tales. I think it's King Lear. Just that salt which is missing in the food is equal or even more than the food which has been cooked. Have you ever seen that? Have you seen sometimes that you spend hours in the kitchen and then have been brought out something which you expect everybody to like and you serve it to everybody and they taste it and you say, what's happened? No salt. I'm a married man. I know some of you have been calling me father. I am a father in a different way. And my wife makes all efforts, quite often, most often, to get me something which I relish in the afternoon and something which I relish in the night to eat. Sometimes she forgets the salt. And this happened very often in our early days of marriage when, poor thing, in our early days she told me, she's a doctor, she told me, these hands, Bob, are not made for cooking. So I thought she's bluffing. I thought all Indian wives no cooking. I found out in a day or two after the honeymoon that those hands were not made for cooking. But she learned. And she learned the hard way of from the beginning how even to boil rice, how even to cook rice and so on. But very often, when we would sit in our early days, the salt would be missing. And that salt would cause that full evening to go wrong. Love was beautiful, romance was beautiful, putting her was beautiful, but that little bit of salt spoiled all that. Everything went to zero because of that little bit of salt. Today in our country, can you imagine what our role is to be the salt of this nation? That is what we need to do as peacemakers. We don't need to bring peace by being a majority. We don't need to bring peace by being the big lot of people in this country. We can bring peace by being one single individual wherever we are. We can do that. And that is what I would like you to, like your Superior General talked about. What I'd like you to go back after 3 days is with the fact of how I can be the salt in this whole nation of India. How can I change this beautiful country which has so much of beauty in it, from the people to the culture to everything, but can I put in that salt and make it right in this confusion? Shall we do that, sisters? Shall we go back to being what Christ wanted us to be? Peacemakers and the salt of the earth. Shall we do that through the next few days? Great. So we went through the Beatitudes. But here's a problem. Peacemakers are not quiet people. Peacemakers are not like the sadhus and gurus that we learn of in Indian history, who disappear to the mountains and sit over there. They found peace. Peacemakers are not the peace feelers. Okay, just because you've got peace within, that doesn't make you a peacemaker. Unless you take that peace and are able to throw it out to the people, you are not a peacemaker. Which means that the peacemaker needs to have a voice. Which means that you can just, not just by sitting by the window and everybody saying, oh, there's Victoria. Sorry, Victoria, sister, I got to know your name yesterday. But there's Victoria sitting all by herself, so peaceful, so nice. Maybe she's thinking of the hospital, maybe she's thinking of the work for tomorrow. But there she is. What a peaceful girl. My dear sisters, that's not enough. Peacemakers need to have a voice. And that voice has to be a voice either in the use of words, either through the use of words with your mouth, or through the use of words with your writing. And when you are able to choose the right words to put across, and the nicest thing about words, or the most beautiful thing about words, is this just 26 letters in the alphabet, which changes us from being violent people to peacemakers. How we use those 26 letters, how you use those 26 letters can make all the difference in your life and the life of this nation. Let us learn to use it. Even as we learn to use our voice, even as we learn to write and so on, let us learn to use words. The Superior General so beautifully put it across by saying, it's finally all about words. Can you believe that the history of this world, that the history of what the future of this world, all depends on words which are uttered. Words which a general commands to his armies. Words which President Biden says now to Israel. Words which our Prime Minister says to somebody else, somewhere else. It's all through words. And that's the power which not only they have, but you and I have. And that's something which we unfortunately don't use because we are too shy. Finally, we are too shy. The person who uses it has two things going for him. One is he or she has got over that shyness, and second is he or she has been able to get over the immediate reaction or the response to something that has happened. Two things. Words is not just about getting the correct words, but it's about getting the appropriate feeling. Is the sound bouncing? No. It's also about getting the appropriate feeling when you respond. So let's learn to use it. Thank you for your lovely introduction, Sister Navya. Thank you very much for it. But every time I listen to that introduction of myself, being a newspaper writer and being a speaker and so on, I'm reminded of a very, very shy boy, a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old who is growing up. I loved singing. I loved singing always because my mother would sing from morning to evening in the kitchen. All I remember of my mother would be that she would, as she cooked, she would sing. And all the hymns that I've learned, everything that I've learned from the kitchen, the sound coming out from the kitchen. Beautiful voice, and she would sing. And she was very keen that I join a choir. And she was very noticeable to the fact that me, with a voice like a soprano, like a girl at that time, she felt that I could sing bass. Bass means, oh, that's her voice. Mothers can see beyond what others can't see, right? So she takes me to this choir and she says, my son would like to sing bass in your choir. Baritone, bass. And the choir master looks at me and says, you can sing bass, is it? You want to join the choir? And I said, yes, I'd like to join the choir. And the choir master looked at my mother and said, bass? It sounded like a soprano. So he said, anyway, okay. Because my mother was, she was also a pretty woman. She said, okay, let him join the choir. We'll see. But you can't sing in the choir. You can come in the morning for the rehearsal, for the practice, and then we'll see whether you can join or not. He didn't expect me to stay on for the rehearsal and come off. So on the third Sunday, I said, I would like to sing in the choir. And he allowed me to. But I was so shy, that during the choir rehearsals, choir practice, I would sit in my place, very happy with the choir practice, but when it came to the little break, I didn't know what to do, because I didn't have any friends, and I didn't have the ability to make friends. And they would serve good samosas and tea outside, and I loved samosas. I don't know if you've tasted the samosas in some of the Muslim hotels. They are fantastic. Nobody has. You have? Mutton samosas? Excellent samosas. My nose would be smelling the samosas, but everything in me never allowed me to go out. So I would sit in my choir. In that same place, I still remember somebody thinking there's something mentally wrong with him because he doesn't talk to anybody, he doesn't move to side left or right or something, because I didn't know whether to look right, what to tell this other person. So I sit there. I've just come to sing. I'll wait for the break to get over. And then the choir members would come back and we start singing again. And then I'll get onto my cycle and go home. That was the kind of shy boy I was. And when I hear the introduction, and I think about the fact that yes, God has given me now the ability to be able to talk. All I want to tell you all is that same God can give each one of you the same ability to talk. And the only reason, and one of the reasons that I got into this course, initially it was to Rotarians, initially it was to destitute women, to people who had to just have a voice in their homes because in a joint family they couldn't speak up. Initially it was just to tell people that once you get a voice, you'll be able to change the immediate world around you. But sisters, you all don't have to change the immediate world. You have to change the outside world as communicators, as a solid. Okay? And what we are going to learn is to be able to equip ourselves to get out of this shyness, to get out of this feeling that we are just one community over here and get across to the nation. That's our job. Which doesn't mean that you now go up and stand next to Modi and start speaking. No. I don't want you all to get into trouble because of that. And then you'll blame Bob. He told us. No. Wherever you are, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're in the school, whatever job you're doing, whatever your vocation is, learn to influence people with peace-giving thoughts. Learn to not just be inside peace-looking people, but people who express peace all over. And when you start doing that, you'll find that slowly you'll start getting equipped with the right words to bring about that same effect. And that is your job. And we are going to learn how to do in my book, there, I have a portion which I'd like to talk about. One of the first ways to become public speakers or good speakers or speakers anywhere, one of the first ways is learning, or rather dreaming about doing it. You can never do or be something more than what you're doing unless you dream about it. I'll give you a very simple example. All those who are not from this province or this Tanmaya home, just put up your hands. Everybody. Okay. How did you like the food? Tasty? How did you like this morning's egg curry with the bread and chapati? How do you think that person, I wish who did it? Who did it?
She's not.
Okay, she's not here. How do you think that person was able to bring about such a good dish? Number one, she saw the dish before she made it. She saw your faces before she served you. She saw the expressions of delight before she even served it and put it on the table. Am I right? She saw that and she worked backwards to prepare it in such a way that it happened that particular way. And unless you see yourself doing something which is extraordinary or out of what you're doing till now, you will be same always. We need to dream to move forward. There's no other way. There's no other way. Otherwise, we'll think of everything as duty. I have to get up at such and such a time in the morning, do this particular thing after that, it's again duty. That's not the way. God gave us one life, yes, eternal life after this, but a life on earth, one life to move forward to get the best out of being His creation, right? So today, these 3 days, we are going to learn to be able to dream of ourselves as speakers, as users of good words, and be able to become peacemakers through this. Shall we do that? Can we? No, not. Shall we just use words? Shall we start dreaming?
Yes.
How? Shall we get ourselves a pillow and put it over there? By the way, one of the first things that I look for when I go somewhere is to see how the pillow is. And I must say, I slept so well because I got a good pillow. Pillows mean a lot. But this is not the dreaming I want to talk about. I want to talk about something called dreaming in concrete. Dreaming in concrete comes from my book there. And I dare not lift it up and open the book because the mic will fall down. So I'm going to say it just like that. I'm not going to read it out. This is a story which I brought from somewhere else. And it's a story of a prince who was a hunchback. Same as any one of us who is shy. A prince who was a hunchback, and he was going to one day become the king of that particular province or that particular state. Now what happened? His brother, they were twin brothers, I forgot to tell you that. His brother, but this chap was the elder fellow. His brother told him, look, who would want a king who's a hunchback? I mean, when they come in front of the throne, they'll only see the back of his head. If he's bald, poor fellow, they'll only get their reflection, right? Oh, you don't know what it is to get reflected from the back, the hall. Nobody wants a king like that. They want a king who they would be stately, standing up, sitting upright, and who they will be able to ask things and will get things done for them. So what did this boy do? What did this prince do? He made a statue of himself and he put it in the garden. And what was the statue looking like? I said a statue of himself. How was the statue? Absolutely straight. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, that's not fair. You were in my class before. Yes. It was a straight statue of the same person in the garden, which the prince looked at every day, and every day, looking at that statue, he would start doing his exercise. And it was painful. If any of you all ever know what it is to go through an arthritic problem or something to do with your shoulder or spondylitis, you'll know that the exercises aren't easy. All of you all are young. But I go through this very often, my wife also, and we have to do these very painful exercises. Some of it is awfully painful. So I can imagine what the prince went through in trying to straighten himself to look like a concrete statue which was in front of him. But he started doing it. Day after day after day, he started doing it. And slowly, his back strengthened. He started standing straight. And one day, when people came to look at the statue, he realized it was not the statue they were looking at, that it was the prince himself. He had straightened himself out. What he did was what I call dreaming in concrete, which means that you can dream and you can have a lovely soft pillow like I had, and it will be beautiful dreams that you have, but unless you put an effort into doing something about that dream, nothing is going to happen, dear sisters. Nothing. And I'm not just talking of speaking and writing, I'm talking of anything you're into. That you need to put in effort day after day. Sometimes night after night also. Putting in effort to see that statue of yourself, which you see, speaking over there, changing the world, will actually come through. And it's important that it comes into place. It's called dreaming in concrete. How do you do it? Let's move from dreams. Let's try to make it more and more to reality. After all, what we are doing here is to find techniques to be able to follow a dream. So let's follow this dream. How do we do it? Again, I'm going to broaden it. I'm not going to actual techniques which we're going to talk about. We've got 3 days to do that. But we're going down into the first thing of dreaming. By the way, anybody here who didn't dream just now? Because I'll help you then. I need you to dream in concrete. I need you to see yourself as sisters who will change this country of ours. I need for us to have writers who will be able to write and move across and be able to explain to people, to other people, that this country is a beautiful country, but it needs to change. Today, I didn't look at my phone to see, but I have, anybody from Nagpur over here? You're from Nagpur. Okay, you have a paper there called the Lok Times.
Yes.
Okay, the Lok Times on Sunday carries my column. So today Nagpur would have called. It's why I asked you about Nagpur is because that's a political column which I write in Nagpur. I've been given this column 10 years back. They still haven't taken the column away from me. The first thing they asked me was, "You're a Christian, will you only write about Christians?" If I only wrote about Christians in Nagpur, which is the RSS head center place, by now they would have kicked me across, kicked me out. I had to learn to be able to write to the other side. I had to learn to be able to write across to the people who did not want to listen to only the atrocities that happened to my Christian community, right? I had to learn to speak the language which they would listen to. Now, in doing that, I had to learn the language or the words which would get across. And some of the words were not to hurt the sentiments of the majority community and others. But still to be able to maybe very often quote from the Bible. Wow, that's walking a tightrope. That's really walking a tightrope. Till I found out after 10 years of writing that nobody can stop us from doing that. It is just when we use words from our scriptures and try to belittle somebody else and saying my word is better than your word, is that when we run into problems. But as long as we try to say that I'm quoting from my scriptures which tells me something, a truth which they also know, nobody refutes it. Have you found that out? The RSS chief is still a close friend of mine. I'm talking Maharashtra. And many years they used to say, if you want to get across to the RSS, talk to Bob. If you want to get across to the church, talk through him. We were very close friends. And as we walked in the mornings, we used to walk together at the park. As we walked together, he would tell me, he would quote from the scriptures of the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. And I told him one day, I said, now that you've been doing it every day, can I now bring in my Bible and quote from the scriptures? He said, yeah, Bob, who said no? Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? Nobody's going to stop you. As long as you learn the language of not putting somebody else down, nobody's going to stop you. You can do it. You can do it. But we need to learn how to do it without intimidating or putting somebody else down. That is the language we need to learn. Peacemakers know that language. And we as peacemakers need to know how to use it. Where do we get it from? The same place you've been learning from morning, the scriptures. The same place that the Superior General, Sister Dolores, talked to you about, the scriptures. She brought to you not just the 4 people that I mentioned from the Bible, but she also brought to you a woman from the Bible. It's unfortunate that I didn't bring it up late, realizing that I was talking to sisters. But there were so many others, so many women from the Bible who were learned. The prophetess Deborah. How did she become a prophetess in the middle of a time when they only recognized men? Just by learning to be able to talk in the language which will be heard. So it's an equal world now. It's no more the world of only men. It's a world now when women are learning to become equal, and it's up to us to be able to show the equality by being peacemakers. But learn the language. Here's a method which I call the PPA method, which gives you the 3 C's, the result of the 3 C's. The PPA method, which number 1 we already saw. The first P is picturize yourself doing what you're supposed to do. Picturize yourself. From the time I was small, of course there was a reason I had to do this, because I was so bad at all the other subjects that the only subject I was good at was writing. So there was, from the time I was small, I pictured myself as a newspaper writer. Really. And the best things that I used to get back from newspapers when I used to write was a little pink slip which they used to send me. And from the age of say 12, I used to stick it on my wall. Pink slips. Do you know what the pink slip said? The editor regrets to say that he cannot use the article. I loved it because it meant to say that the editor had actually replied to me. And for me, the editor was, wow, some big chap who had the power to reject my article or the power to take it. But I started writing because I pictured myself from the age of 12 being a columnist. At the age of 12, sisters, if any time I talk about myself, it is not, please don't think it is to glorify myself. No, it isn't. It's just that I don't take things from Google search and so on. I can only reflect like this book from things which have happened to me. Okay? Everything that has happened to me has come through God. So I just mentioned myself. It is just to tell you what made me do something. Okay? Don't ever think it is to do with what I have achieved. Not for a moment. So there is to be these 2 writers, one by the name of Behram Contractor, the other by the name of Art Buckwald. And I read that column when I was 12 years old. Art Buckwald was an American writer, and he used to write a beautiful satire column. And the first time I read that satire column at the age of 12, I took it to my uncle and I said, is this true? And my uncle told me that this is humor. This is humor. And through humor, you'll be able to tell the truth without hurting people. Use humor. And I shouldn't say I have a sense of humor, but some people do think I'm funny. At least my wife laughs at some jokes I say, okay? So I must be having some sense of humor. So I said, okay, let me use humor and try to bring that into my writing. I pictured myself writing like Art Kapoor. Can you picture yourself in some place where your words can have some effect in bringing out peace? Can you picture yourself doing that? It could be anywhere. It could be a place of conflict in your school, in your hospital, anywhere. Can you picture yourself being the peacemaker and not getting and increasing the conflict by trying to take sides? The first stage of trying to reach a place in which we can do what we dream to do is by picturizing ourselves. And why I brought in myself as a writer is that was something which I have to use and something which seems to have worked. My grandmother told me this, and that's why I'm telling you this. When I was 4 years old, I'm sure none of you all drink this drink called Horlicks. Anybody drinks it? Horlicks? Nobody's heard of it. Sister, Victoria, you don't give it to the patients. You give them Horlicks and they'll get up and walk out of it. Those days, people said, Avina, you know Horlicks? Because at one time, anything in the world could be cured by Horlicks. Anything. You know, you got a cold, Horlicks. You got cancer, Horlicks. You got anything, Horlicks. Because there was nothing else. Horlicks was what we poor or other middle class people could afford and give to the poor people who were sick. Horlicks. Horlicks came in a small box, and I would take that box and play with it on the ground. And my grandmother used to tell me, Bob, what are you playing with? I'd say, the word we used to use was Amama. I'm playing car. Car? What? And that is your car? I said, yes. Would you like to have a real car? I said, wow, yes. Bob, if you're able to look at that Horlicks bottle and dream that that is a car, one day you'll get a car. And you know something? I followed her and I still follow her right till now. When in 1986 or 84, the Maruti came out, Maruti 800. And I said, I want a Maruti 800. I cut that out from the ad and put it and stuck it on my table. And in a year's time or 9 months' time, I was able to buy a Maruti 800. Fate works. Fate works. Picturize it. Picturize what you want to become. The second P is prayerize it. Prayerize it. It is so important to be able to prayerize it and tell yourself that it can pray. I've made a word out of it. It's prayerize. Prayerize. Some years back, I had gone down to Bangalore and met a priest. My cousin was there, and my cousin said, Bob, you need to come along with me, years back. And he said, meet this priest. And when I met this priest in Bangalore, he said, anybody from Bangalore here knows Bangalore? There's a place called Koramangala. And the priest was quite a young chap, and he says, I said, what are you doing now? He said, no, I'm planning to build a church. So I said, how big? He said, what? I said, how big? No, as much as the people give me money, it's so big. I said, no, that's not the way you build a church. And I was a youngster, talking to a priest. I could have been excommunicated. So I said, no, that's not the way you do it. Let's draw it. And my cousin was like, Bob, let's get out of here. Bob, stop this. You can't talk like this way. I said, no, let's draw this. Let's draw the church. He said, I can't draw the church. I don't know how big the church is supposed to be. I said, think how big the church is supposed to be. How many people do you want in it? And I pushed him. And he said, if I get 200, it's 200. It's a small church. How much would you like? How many people would you like? And he gave me the numbers. I said, okay, we draw this church. And I was in a business which was in construction, so I knew how to draw churches. Okay, if I still couldn't draw human figures like stick figures, I could draw a church, draw a building. So we drew the church. Now I said, make a model of the church. Put it in your room and bring the people and let them walk around and pray over that building and it will happen. How did I get this thought? Not because I wasn't a religious person. My grandmother taught me that if you have a Horlicks bottle and you take a Horlicks box and if you can play car with it and pray to God up there and say, Lord, give me a car one day and work towards it, you will get it. Imagine, and me telling a priest to do that. And he did it. And there have been innumerable stories I can tell you of this power working in different ways in my life. To be able to picturize it, prayerize it, and then activate it. Activate it, put it into motion, talk to people about it, tell them that you want to do this. Work towards it, activate it. It doesn't happen with just in your mind. You want to be a speaker, you want to be a writer, you need to activate it, which means that after today's and tomorrow's and day after tomorrow's session, you start activating your power of speaking, your power of writing, wherever you are. You might say, but I am in a position which doesn't help me to be able to speak and write. Which magazine can I write for? They won't take it. Right? Now, who here says that there's no magazine which will take my writing right at the moment? Truthfully, put up your hands. And I would expect everybody to put up your hands. Put up your hands. But I want to see the truthful people. Who's going to take my writing if I start writing today? Put up your hands. Let's see. Because the others can leave the room, because I don't think I need to address them. That's the thing. See, the beauty of maybe a person like a columnist writing is the fact that today I can know how good or bad I wrote by the readers who write back to me, right? But you, where are you going to learn whether you wrote a good article or not? Because there's no place for you to write. You're going to ask me that. There's no place for me to speak. There's no place for me to write. So Bob, what are you talking about? Am I right? If I speak up over here, who's going to listen to me? I can't change the world right here. Nobody's going to listen to me. I need a platform. I need somewhere where people will listen. Now we come down to, I'm actually mentally putting down Sister Navya and Sister Sadhana from getting up and telling me what I'm going to say next. Now I'll tell you where you as potential speakers and writers have a platform, ready-made platform right around you, right from the word go. Writers love to be read. Speakers love to be heard. Nobody wants to speak in a room to the wall. Nobody wants to write in a diary and so that it will be read only after 10 years and you'll say, oh my God, I was so young, I had these thoughts. Some of us do keep diaries, but most of us write to be read and speak to be heard. Knowing this, we come in this course to have what we call the WPC method. It's called the WPC method, where right now, please don't start right immediately because I want to be heard, but right after this class, you can start being heard and you can start being read. Because there is a whiteboard waiting for you, and the whiteboard for you is all the people around you, for you is all the people around you. The WPC method is, W is watch the way you speak, P is plan the way you speak, and C is change the way you speak. I'll just have a sip. Watch the way you speak, plan the way you speak and change the way you speak. And how is it going to affect your writing and your speaking? Well, there was once a time, I'm a student of literature, so we had to study a lot of stuff written by Shakespeare and a lot of stuff written by the old authors who wrote, Ben Jonson and Samuel Johnson and all these people who wrote either before Shakespeare or after Shakespeare. Now, if I read any of their writings, something that comes to my mind is the fact that what they write is Shakespeare in English. Is it to be or not to be? And that kind of language which no Englishman at that time spoke. So at one given time, they wrote a particular way and they spoke a particular way. Can you have anybody read Shakespeare over here? Can you imagine at that time, 400 or 500 years back, people talking that way? Full fathom five, that father, the lines of his bones are coral made, nothing of him that fade, but that suffer merrily, merrily, merrily shall I live now. That's from King Lear. Can you imagine anybody talking that way on the street in Shakespeare's time? They were crass people, they were crude people. They never talked that way, they wrote that way. But they talked absolutely, maybe even worse language English than we talked, because there were so many influences. French and the old Anglo, Saxon English and all that. But slowly over the period of time, the written word and the spoken word started becoming one. So today, anybody here got WhatsApp? All of you got WhatsApp. Okay, what do you, when you send a message to each other, what do you call it? Chat. What initially, once upon a time, what did chat mean? Speaking. Once upon a time, chat meant speaking. Today, chat means writing. So that shows how closely now speaking and writing have become one. We're using the same language. Change has taken place throughout the world. People don't have time anymore to write in a particular way and to speak in another way. Today, we write and speak the same way. It's a complete change. Now, here's the thing. If people are writing and speaking the same way, then what about taking the audience which is around you and making them your whiteboard? Which means, whiteboard, I mean the white paper which you write on. Which means that when, yes, the Sister Pinu was saying that some of you have changed rooms to be with each other, right? I liked that. Now, one of the reasons that you change rooms to be with each other is familiarity, because you knew each other. Am I right? Yes. Okay. So, in the outside world, like me and my wife, we talk to each other every day. My children and I, we talk to each other every day. And if you change rooms, you're talking to a friend. Start practicing talking words in ways in which communication becomes even more emphatic and clearer. WPC method is to start making the audience around you to be your readers and your listeners. In other words, let's take a conversation which you are going through when you're with your roommate. Just pass the thing from there now. Just pass the thing from there now. What thing? That thing. You mean the cup? That cup. Not that cup, the other cup. Which one? The pink one. Now, you have to take 3 to 4 sentences to get your meaning across. Have you ever realized that sometimes we write that way? We write the same way because we talk the same way. If we could start talking specific, could you just pass me that pink cup from there and get it across to me? In one sentence, you have been able to get your meaning across clearly, fully, and completely, right? And which better way to practice than with the people now you change rooms with? Because those are the people you're going to take for granted and say that, oh, they know me so well, when I say pass the thing from there, they know what it is. You know, my wife is a doctor, and she tell me sometimes, and she went over there, and in my mind, I've just written something for Nagpur paper, and I've written something for the Punjab Kesari, but she's my wife, right? I can't ask her, be clearer. So I'm quiet. But finally I can't take it anymore. I said, who went over where? And she says, but she went over. I said, who? I can only talk now about my wife because she's not here. And I don't like talking about her because I really love her very much. So I don't like talking about her. But what I'm trying to say is that she's a doctor, and she is very specific in her medical profession, because it is always a life and death situation they go through in the hospital. But when it comes to communication, and because I'm a husband, it's that she went over there, you know what happened, and I'm supposed to know what. And we go through 3-4 sentences before I know what she's talking about. Oh my God, I'm being recorded, and she might listen to this. Cut out that part. That means that we as professionals also do the same thing. It's not that we are doing these things because we don't know English. We do these things because we are not careful about the way we speak, and we still think that we can communicate. So practice now 2 things. One is watch the way you speak. How are you been speaking now to the people who are close to you? Watch the way you're speaking. Watch. Am I being clear? Am I completely getting my meaning across? If I'm not getting my meaning across, can I do it in a better way? But watch yourself from this moment. Please do it. Actually, this is something so very simple in the class that very often my class doesn't, and I feel hurt after that when I come back to my class. Navya must have heard it, or Sadhana also. Next time when I come to the class, I ask them, have you practiced your WPC method? And everybody like, it's so simple. Who wants to practice these things? We paid money because we thought you'd give us some high funda techniques. No, some of the most profound things can be learned from simple techniques. You know, we are good at jugaad in our country. So this is one of it. Take what is around us, practice with that. Watch the way you speak from now. Are you being clear? Are you being specific? Are you being understood? And the P is plan the way you speak. Plan the way you speak. This is also supposed to be, I forgot to tell you, an interactive session in which any of you can get up and ask me a question. Now, of course, we haven't reached that stage. Maybe that's why you haven't interrupted me. Or maybe I'm talking sense for once, which is why also you haven't interrupted me. But sometimes, when question hour is there, one of us gets up, puts up a hand and says, we want to ask a question, right? And the question is in our mind. And then we start the first words, and after that, we don't know what to say, and everybody starts laughing. What we have in our mind is something very definite, very specific, but we have not planned it. We have not planned saying the whole sentence completely in our mind. You all decided to come over here to Bhopal. Did you get into a train and said, or did you tell your superiors in your place, I'll just go to the station and take any train and go wherever it is? No, you didn't. You decided to go, and the end of the train journey would be Bhopal, end of the plane journey, airport would be Bhopal. Isn't that so? The same with speech. Know the end of your speech before you begin to even talk it. Where do you want to end? Otherwise, when you become old, I haven't seen any old sisters here because everybody here is quite young. Really, everybody over here. But when you become old, then people will call you a bore. Because you'll say, you know, in 1923, and then you go and sit down with that person. In 1923, this is what happened, and I was a sister over here, and then there was this dog outside, and then the other sister who's sitting with you will say, okay, I've got 5 minutes, let me find out about the dog. And this is what happened to the dog, and we didn't know the dog was bitten by something, and it came running to me, and it bit me. And you sitting there will think, okay, now this story is coming to an end. And then the person will say, and then I had to go to the hospital. And not only was the dog bitten, one cat also was bitten. And I must tell you about what happened to the cat also. And then you know by the end of it, that person is going to talk about the full zoo. But when you know the end of your story, you know the end of your conversation, then you will start your journey in talking, knowing where you have to end, and you'll end it there. It's something we all need to know. That once we know where we're supposed to stop, once we plan our speech, we will automatically be able to know the words, because it's just like story writing, which we go into soon, today, tomorrow, day after. It's just like a story. When you know the end of the story, the beginning of the story becomes powerful, the process of writing becomes powerful, because we know where we're going to end. So plan whatever you're going to speak. Anybody wants to ask me a question? Oh, nobody wants to do any planning.
Can we have a 5 minutes break?
Yes, I'll have a 5 minutes break. I just finished the C. We finished the C. What's the time? Oh,
1 hour.
we got time. Yes. I am not tired. I'm sure all the sisters are tired, right? This is what happens with listening, you know. The person who's talking, he feeds on your energy. Okay, and he gets more energized. And what I can see today is sometimes I get depleted, completely depleted if I'm talking to a blank wall and people not understanding me. Then unfortunately that also happens when I don't speak well maybe. I don't blame the audience. But today I'm feeling energized and I'm loving it. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, because you're the fuel in which we feed on. When you respond, and it doesn't have to be respond in voice, when you respond in expression, that's energy which I get, or any speaker gets. So we come to the C and then we can have a small break. Okay? The C is, and the most important part of the WPC method, is change the way you've been doing it till now. It's so easy to think, okay, Bob has given us a WPC method and so on, and we'll go back, and after some time, we go back to our old thing. Go there and come back now. Where are you going? Bring that and come back. No. I've heard people telling me, and this comes one by one from different people in the course, Bob, the WPC method, it's so simple, but it's changed my life. Two instances were there yesterday. Did I mention it yesterday to somebody? 2 letters which came in. Oh no, it was my class day professor where I mentioned it. 2 letters came in day professor from 2 people mentioning how they were able to use this method, and they talked in Patna, and another person had been called to speak somewhere else in Bangalore, I think. And they said, Bob, it was just the WPC method of being able to practice using specific words, planning my ending, and watching myself speak that has helped me. Thank you very much. So it's simple. And the other letter which came was from, sister, was Rajiv part of your class, a person named Rajiv? You don't remember? Rajiv was a person who used to stammer. And he came as part of my course, and somebody told him that if you want to learn how to get out of stammering, that you will have to pay such and such an amount and so on. He said, I don't have that kind of money. So he came to me and he said, Bob, what about it? And it was after the first class. I didn't really know that he stammers. So I asked him, but I haven't heard you stammering in the class. And then he said, no, with you I don't stammer. So I said, the problem is not you, the problem is the person who you're talking to, which means that some people intimidate you, right? Some people makes you scared. So I said, fine, so we don't address your stammering, we address the fear part of you. And when he got over this fear, now I must send it to you just to show, this man now sells tulsi plants and other plants, Rajiv D'Souza. And every week, he gives a full video about the plant. Not one word is there in which he stutters or stammers. He has changed the way he's speaking. He started practicing with his wife and slowly became effective. So WPC sisters, have a break and we'll come back after 5 minutes. 5 minutes is enough or you want 50 minutes?